Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Peptide PhDs podcast. I'm Dr. Alan Jones.
And I'm Mark Bartlett. We're so glad to be with you tonight. And we're going to shake it up a little bit tonight. And because we've been shaken up a little bit. What do you reckon?
Yeah, we got shook up pretty good this week, didn't we?
Yeah. So we last week we did Peptides 101 because we're all about peptides. And so we thought, let's go back to some basics and talk about what are peptides, what's the difference between natural and synthetic peptides, how do they work in the body, and what can you do about it? And we got a lot of feedback from it. And the feedback was, I guess, a little bit sobering to us.
It was.
One of our, at least one or two comments back. We have emails and things on our Facebook page. And it was like, hey, Dr. Alan, Dr. Mark, it was way too medical. You were using terms that were just a little on the hard to understand. We couldn't even pronounce the words. We couldn't spell the words. Like, is there something that you can do? Like, I brought my mother onto this podcast expecting to learn something, and you guys were geeking out like PhDs do, right?
Yeah. Well, and that wasn't our intent last week. When we said we were going to do a Peptides 101, I feel like we really tried to go back to the basics, but obviously we didn't do a good job of that. And so this week we're going to come back and we're going to really kind of dive into Peptides 101, just in a more simpler version of what we did last week with no study this week, right?
I know, right? No study. And here's the thing, like we just got off a call from it was a medical advisory board for another organization. Yeah. And so we were talking to doctors and we were using highly technical terms that they all understood, and they were geeking out and asking us technical questions as well. And we often have to flip back and forth, right? From talking to doctors, talking to medical professionals, and then talking to everyday people. And I think sometimes we forget a little bit how to keep things simple.
Yeah.
And we talk biochemistry and physiology. So, but, we love this because it's an opportunity. Like maybe there's a 25% or a third of the audience that say, yeah, like, can you please make it a little simpler? So we will do that tonight. Well, I have to also still continue to give you a caveat. So I did, a 3-year degree in biochemistry, and then a master's in biochemistry, and then a 4-year PhD in cell biology, and then a postdoc in cell biology and immunity. And, with that background, it's not too difficult to understand peptides. But let's go back and say, well, okay, so we've got 1 hour to talk Peptides 101 with you, and it's an entire biochemistry course. So actually, we're pretty good at getting it so that the average person can understand. But there's always another way to look at things, right? Another approach, another way to teach. And that's what we're going to try to do tonight.
Yeah, that's right. And so when you think about a peptide, we pointed out last week that really peptides are small strings of amino acids. Do you have your?
Yeah, go for it. But meanwhile, while he's looking for our models, let me say we're going to divide today's podcast into 3 chapters. First, we're going to talk about some peptides that you've heard of. You may not know that they're peptides, but you've heard of them. And we're going to talk about how they work in the body and give you some examples. In chapter 2 today, we're going to ask the question, well, how come everyone's heard of them now? Like even 6 months or a year ago, nobody knew what a peptide was. And now they're asking, what's a peptide? Can you explain it to me, right? So we'll give you some context about why today people are asking about peptides. What's their touch point? Why is this interesting all of a sudden?
Yep.
And then the third chapter will be, what now? Like, what have you got to offer?
Mm-hmm.
What is this natural peptide that you're talking about, and why do I need it? So that's how we'll divide it up. So first of all, let's talk about some of those basics.
Yeah. So very basically, listen, if you look at this particular, if I pull this off right here on this particular string, you've got one amino acid, okay? And I think and I want you to put in the comments, does everybody understand what an amino acid is? If you don't understand, let us know. But an amino acid is basically a very small chemical. It has very specific functions in the body individually, can do a lot of things. It's used by the body to also build muscles.
It's a building block.
It's a building
for those
block.
that are listening and not seeing, because we do have a live audience that can see, but for those who can't, imagine, I don't know if you know what stickle bricks are.
I don't know. Is that an Australian
What
thing?
would you call it? Like maybe let's talk about
Legos?
different colored Legos.
Yeah.
Right. So imagine that in front of you, Dr. Allen has got a green Lego stuck to 2 orange ones and stuck to a blue one, another orange one, and a blue one. And he just pulled off the green one. The green one is one of the building blocks. It's an amino acid, right?
Right.
And just imagine that there are 20 colors in this little kit that you have of
amino
Legos.
acids. Yeah.
Yep.
And so by itself, it's an amino acid. But when you start putting them together in very small chains, they become what are called peptides. And you've got 2 is called a dipeptide, 3 is called a tripeptide, 4 is an oligopeptide. When you get above 50 of these in a big bunch, might look like this to some extent, all wrapped up.
He's now
more than
holding up
50.
a Lego model of the Battlestar Galactica, for those of you who cannot see.
Yeah, that's kind of what it looks like. But when you get more than 50, they become proteins, okay? And it's those proteins that are used by the body to build enzymes. They're used by the body to build muscles, all different kinds of organs. And so there's a lot of things in the body that are built with these little bitty building blocks called amino acids. Now, in our company, we're really, really interested in peptides because peptides have very unique properties. Proteins are more structural, where peptides are more like communicators, right?
Yeah. But let me go back to you playing with your silly Legos, right? Imagine, guys, that you have like this huge bucket of Legos in front of you and there are only 20 colors. They probably don't have that many colors in real life, but you got 20. Now imagine that you're going to put together 10 at a time. So those are peptides with 10 amino acids, right? Yep. Now on the wall, there might be a chart. And on that chart, there are 3 sort of diagrams with 10 colors, 10 different colors. And you've put together the whole box. Now, how many in that box are going to match the exact codes that are on the wall? Do you get what I'm saying? So you have to pull out each of those 10 Legos, and one might be orange, 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 green, green, blue, blue. And now you're going to hold up like, oh, yeah, that doesn't exist on the wall. So what you have there is a peptide, but it's not binding to a key. It's not binding to a receptor.
Yep, that's
so
right.
Think of these peptide combinations as a key. And you might have hundreds of little peptides, but if none of them has the right combination to unlock the key that's on the wall, which we'll call a receptor, then it's really, it's not a bioactive peptide. It's just a piece of protein.
That's right.
And that's the difference. So if you catch that in that bucket of Legos, there's going to be 1 or 2 maybe that are actually bioactive peptides that will bind to a receptor on a cell in the body and activate something. So for all those that are online right now, like, give me a yes if you catch that. Meanwhile, let's talk about some that people have heard of. So you've probably heard of insulin. I'm guessing that most of you have heard of insulin, and that is a peptide. But when scientists first discovered it over 100 years ago, they didn't know what it was. They just knew it was a string of amino acids. I think maybe they didn't even know that at first. But they knew that in certain individuals that had this awful wasting disease called diabetes, this peptide made the difference. It basically cured that disease. That's an example of the right string of, it's about 50 amino acids, I think, that are bound in a chain, right, together. So 2 chains bound by a disulfide bond. This is an amazing peptide. We've all heard of it. It's insulin. If you are a normal, healthy person, your body will produce this peptide when you eat food, especially if you eat something sugary, because that peptide then is like the body triggers a signal to the pancreas and says, we need insulin. Why? Because that peptide is magic in binding to a receptor in cells and helping those receptors to pull in the protein and the glucose from the blood. So how
about the next one? The next one is my favorite.
Okay. For those that are live, Alan and I are hugging. Now, if you hug someone, if you hug your child or your spouse or your brother, for 8 seconds, you're going to feel something, right?
That's
you
right.
feel something.
That's right.
Like, I actually feel really good after hugging
Yeah,
you,
that was
man.
great, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So what makes you feel like that? Like, okay, there's physical touch, there's kind of love going on, but why do you feel that special feeling, this like burst of something? The hugging hormone is actually oxytocin.
Yep.
So this is another peptide.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, I'm really missing my daily oxytocin dumps because my wife is back in Texas and I'm all the way up here in Utah, so I have to rely on Dr. Bartlett and Brett to give me my hugs every day.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Carmen commented. She said that's mateship right there. And boy, Carmen, I didn't know that you're familiar with Australian culture.
Oh, Carmen's Australian, I believe so.
I didn't know that. Good on you, Carmen.
Yep, absolutely.
All Aussies, welcome to this podcast. So yeah, it's an amazing peptide, and this peptide does more. So some peptides do more than one thing. So if you are 9 months pregnant and you are ready to give birth, you're going to have oxytocin released in great levels, and that will actually sort of open the uterus and help to expel the baby. And then when you're breastfeeding, oxytocin is what helps to produce the milk, right? So this is how, I mean, peptides is so powerful, and that gives you a glimpse into the power of these peptides. Let me I'm going to write down a note here for chapter 2, Pitocin, right? I don't know how to spell it, but let's bring it up later.
Yep.
All right, let's talk about another peptide that you've probably heard of. When you are hungry, what the devil is signaling to your brain that it's time to go to the snack cabinet and look for something healthy like cashews, or even something unhealthy like, I don't know, a ding dong.
Yeah, something like that.
So what drives that?
Yep. Well, that would be another peptide called ghrelin that is basically produced in our gut, right? And impacts our brain and
Gives
tells
me
us
hunger like a gorilla.
Yeah, that's right.
Food-seeking behavior is driven by this tiny little peptide in the body.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and that's, we actually have a product that actually inhibits or at least decreases the amount of ghrelin being excreted from our body so that it helps us to control that hunger.
And we're going to talk about that in chapter 3, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. We have another, if we go to 6:20, right, we've got another 7 minutes to talk about a couple more examples. Okay, so I've gone to the snack cabinet. I've eaten 4 ding dongs and a Twinkie and something healthy, some cashews, and I'm feeling a little better. I'm not feeling hungry anymore. Why? There's another peptide, right, that gets released.
It's called GLP-1.
Yep, that's one of them. There's a few, but that's one of the main ones we've heard about, right?
And GLP-1 actually causes the release of another peptide called DPP-4, right? Dipeptidylpeptidase 4. But, we're all familiar with the GLP-1s. And in fact, if you really want to know why we're all so interested in peptides, as we said earlier, it's all about the GLP-1. They've become very, very popular.
Yeah, we'll mention that in chapter 2, right?
Yeah.
So we've talked about insulin. You've all heard of insulin. It's a peptide, right? We've talked about oxytocin, the hugging hormone, but also the breastfeeding hormone. Like, it's amazing, right? We've talked about hunger, instituted by ghrelin. We've talked about GLP-1. That's the one that, like, now that I'm full, my body's getting the message. It's sending signals to my brain. It's sending signals to the rest of my body, right? But we've got 5 minutes to talk about probably your favorite series of peptides, because Alan here is a PhD in muscle physiology. I'll give you a minute to talk about that or two, and I'm going to talk about my favorite peptides as an immunologist.
Great. Well, my favorite peptides, I think everybody will know that's been on this podcast, are little peptides secreted by our body as a result of muscle contractions called myokines. I absolutely love myokines, but myokines are our inside our body pharmacy. They're an endogenous pharmacy. When we're exercising our muscles and we're contracting those muscles, we actually have the ability to secrete more than 600 myokines that can impact everything from our brains to our hearts to our livers to our pancreas to our skin. Even our microbiome is impacted by these myokines.
I would venture, sorry to interrupt, that most people have not heard of this. And in fact, we've talked to doctors that have not heard of this. So it's spelled MYOKINE. right? Myokine.
Yep.
So you guys should jot that down and maybe Google it later, and
Mhm.
AI will tell you all about myokines. And maybe but understand that these are peptides and proteins,
Mhm.
communication molecules from the muscle.
That's right. Exactly. Secreted from the muscle that impacts every organ system in our body. And in fact, all the doctors that on that board not one of them knew what a myokine was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I gave early this year, went to Berkeley and talked to a bunch of integrated physicians. These are guys who know not just mainstream medicine, but everything peripheral to it. They're amazing. There were 500 doctors there, and I think I could count on one hand the number who had heard of myokines, muscles, peptides from the muscle that are communication.
Yep.
It's amazing, isn't it? So you guys are going to be the coolest kids at the party when you tell people that you know what myokines are. So study that up. You're going to be ahead of the curve.
That's right. That's right. So how about from an immunologist perspective?
Okay. From an immunologist perspective, I got to tell you that I was that guy until I met Dr. Allen here, who's a muscle physiologist. I'm like, what the bloody hell are myokines? But of course I'm a PhD, so I couldn't show that. So I was like, sure, I know what myokines are. Hey, let me Google myokines. How do you spell that? So, but for 40 years or more, as an immunologist, I've studied the language of the immune system. So if myokines speak German, the immune system, they speak Chinese, and they've got a very rich vocabulary too of proteins and peptides that are keys, like little blocks of the right color of these Legos that are binding the right receptors. So this is how T cells communicate with B cells. It's how when a bacteria or a virus get in the body, then there are certain immune cells like the macrophage that say, ooh, looky here. It's a foreign particle, and it sends out this vocabulary of peptides, and they're often called like interleukins and interferons and all sorts of things, CD. So these are all what we call chemokines or cytokines. So they have a different name. They're not myokines, right? Cyto, CYTO means cell body. And so these chemokines, they're like chemical bodies that attract the other immune cells, communicate with them, tell them what to do. So those are my favorite. But long story short, this is your body. It's more amazing than maybe you gave it credit for.
Yeah. Let me really, really simplify what we're talking about. Everything that we just talked about, myokines, chemokines, all the immunity peptides, all of those. Here's what you have to remember, and here's the overarching message. They are simply communication molecules. They're messages, okay? It's like sending a Snapchat to one of your buddies. You would be the peptide. Your buddy receives that. He looks at it. They are the receptor. Once that thing is there, it sends its message, and then it disappears. That peptide dissipates, goes back into amino acids. Those amino acids are recycled and reused to either build other peptides, other myokines, other chemokines, or other proteins. Right.
And they're simple words, right? It's not a whole sentence. It's just a simple word. Like maybe the myokine to the muscle might be grow. Maybe the myokine from the muscle to the brain is like get smarter, wake up.
enough.
Right?
That's right.
So
That's right.
I think Snapchat is the perfect example because these are not designed to last forever. They get generated, they decay, and if the body needs it, they'll regenerate the signal.
That's right. So it's all about cellular communication. Really, really, really simple. Okay. And please let us know. Do not be afraid to comment. I don't understand what you're saying, guys. Let us know, because we don't know what we don't know. And we're trying to make this really, really simple so that people can come away with this with a game plan on how beneficial peptides are and how to use those peptides to optimize their health.
And for those few people that did email us, I can understand that you don't understand. I was talking to some of our leaders today that came into the office, right? They're very successful in this peptide business. And they were asking me all sorts of questions. And they said, oh my gosh, Mark, there's so much to learn. So you don't have to know everything, but these are just things that are nice to know. So Bob and Laurie, they asked the question, are myokines the same as extracellular vesicles? I've been seeing and hearing about these references lately. Actually, let's look at a cell, the whole cell structure. I've got a picture of one behind me here. You have the cell, The cell membrane is the outer membrane. You've got another membrane inside that is the nucleus where the DNA is stored. There are lots of other little compartments in the cell. The cell is not just a disorganized sort of scramble. It actually files things away quite nicely in things called vesicles. So some of these vesicles will have growth factors, or they might even have peptide growth factors and things like that. So these vesicles contain some of these communication molecules and other things that they might then release from the cell.
So the answer to that is they are not the same as extracellular vesicles.
But they might be the envelope that is holding the letter, which is the peptide communicator, right?
Exactly.
All right, it's time for chapter 2. And chapter 2, today, why are we hearing so much about peptides? We weren't having this conversation with average person 2 years ago.
2 years ago, for sure.
So something happened that changed the landscape. Can any of you listening sort of guess right now what happened to change the landscape that suddenly everyone's aware?
Let
Giving you a minute.
Let everybody respond. Everybody knows.
Kick us off. Kick us off.
Ozempic.
Ozempic.
Wegovy.
And
GLP-1s.
Yes, they've been around for a while and a lot shorter than insulin, but we kind of took insulin for granted. But suddenly we started hearing about Ozempic. And Ozempic was, under these other names, they're basically GLP-1 receptor agonists, which means, and I'm going to write it down, it's spelled GLP in capitals -1. And then receptor agonist means something that binds to a receptor and activates it. And so the body does this. We just learned this, right? We learned that the body already produces GLP-1. It's the signal, it's the peptide that your body produces when you're full. So why the interest in Ozempic and these other peptides? Well, A, they're super powerful, but B, I guess the bottom line is that pharma, what do you call it?
Big pharmaceutical
companies. There you go. Abbreviating it. Pharmaceutical companies discovered, hey, we can actually copy this. We can copy what nature has given you. And it doesn't survive the gut, so let's modify it. And what they do in science is, like, now imagine you've got on the wall, you've got those colors that you have to match. So you've got the key, but the key dissolves before it gets to the lock. So biochemists have been doing this for years. They can do what's called amino acid substitution. Let's swap out that blue there because we know there's an enzyme that breaks up between the blue and the green, and let's put an orange there because it's kind of a big amino acid, and let's see if it still works because that's going to help to stop it degrading. And they say, oh man, it still degrades, let's try a different one. And then, oh, it's getting better, but let's make it last even longer. And so they might put like a big lipid side chain on it. And so before long, you've got something that, yes, it binds to that receptor and it lasts in the body for a long time, but you probably need to inject it. But it still lasts not 2 minutes, not 4 minutes, but actually
7 days.
7 days. And so, we talked about how powerful peptides are. Like, that hug was powerful. I'm still feeling the love, right? So that's oxytocin 5-10 minutes ago. Peptides are super powerful. And if you modify them with very clever pharma, they can be very powerful for a very long time. This is why you've all heard of it, because people can lose massive amounts of weight with something like that. And there are other peptides too that they can create in the same way, right?
Oh, there are tons of other peptides that they're doing, whether it's, your BPC 157s or some of the other things. But
there are some muscle peptides. Let me talk about one that we mentioned earlier. So we talked about oxytocin. If they want to induce labor, okay, who in the audience knows what the peptide is that, like, you probably don't know it as a peptide. Maybe you didn't think about it before, but if they have to induce labor for one reason or another, they use a particular drug. It's a peptide, and it's called
as a drip.
As a drip called Pitocin, right? Sounds like oxytocin, but it is a trademark name, right? Pitocin, and that is a synthetic peptide that is just as strong, maybe stronger. It's on a drip, and that actually signals the body to give labor. The interesting thing about Pitocin, I think is very instructive, is that women report that when they're given Pitocin to induce labor, it's very painful.
Yeah.
I mean,
heard
labor
that.
is painful as it is, but it's more painful.
Mhm.
And the reason is because the body, when it produces oxytocin naturally during the birthing process, actually comes in waves. So you relax the muscle, and then the wave comes, and then the uterus sort of expands a little bit more and pushes back, and then it relaxes a little
Mhm.
bit. So when it's constant, it seems to hurt more. I'm not talking as an expert, but as a father who has witnessed the birth of 8 children, I got a little bit of a sense of it, right?
Yep.
So there's an example of how the synthetic peptides have great utility in medicine. They're
Yeah.
amazing. They're very powerful. But when they are synthetic and when they have long half-lives, they do have different effects. They can be very powerful, but may have
Yeah.
side effects, right?
Yeah. And it's just like, it's even just like our products, right? Our products, whether, you've got a product like this particular product, the peptides in those products are tools. They're tools that are meant to be used to optimize certain functions. And so when you look at the synthetic peptides, even the Pitocins, a Pitocin is used as a tool to help a woman get through labor. Even oxytocin is used as a tool during birth to help progress through certain phases,
Mhm.
right? And so you have to understand a GLP-1, and we're not here to bash. That's not what we're about. And you guys know, you heard our podcast 3 weeks ago when we talked all about GLP-1s. GLP-1s are incredible tools and they're changing people's lives. But you have to understand that when they're used outside of the realm of being a tool and they're misused in other ways, they can be incredibly dangerous. So make sure that when you use something like that, you understand what the real use of that product is, how to use it properly, and understand that if you're not using it properly, there are going to be consequences to that.
Yeah.
So
Let's I think it's probably appropriate right now to talk about those differences.
Mhm.
So synthetic, we've talked about, is different from natural. And some of the questions that we get, this is one of the most common questions, is like, okay, I've heard of these synthetics, right? So there are drugs that are approved by the FDA.
Yeah.
So things like Pitocin, like Ozempic.
Mhm.
There are probably others. I'm not aware of all of them, right? So those are pharma. They're approved by the FDA. Doctors will prescribe them. Now, you've probably heard of other peptides
Mhm.
in a different area. Maybe it's a gray market. I don't know
Yeah.
what you call it, but it's
Research
compounding
peptides.
pharmacies. Yeah. If most of your friends who are going to ask you or talk about peptides, they'll say, yeah, I know about peptides. They're mostly seeing stuff on Instagram or on Facebook or heaven knows where, on websites that are peptides that are nearly always injected.
Yeah.
And for all sorts of things, for healing. Was one called BPC 157 for healing. That one I don't believe is approved by the FDA, but it was isolated from the human gut.
Yep.
And so they have this peptide that you can buy that you can inject, and maybe it does, maybe it doesn't help with healing.
Mhm.
And maybe they're injecting it into joints or whatever it might be. But it's not approved by the FDA, and there aren't a lot of studies on it. I think there are mouse studies, right?
Yeah.
So that was what you would call a compounding pharmacy. Where does that peptide come from? It usually comes from pharmacies and things in China, right? So chemical factories that make these peptides. It's not hard anymore. There are US companies too that are making them.
Yeah.
But I understand, like, if you really want value for money, these peptides are often from overseas.
Yeah.
And you will see, look closely on those websites if you want to buy one. I'm not advising that you buy them, but you look closely and you'll see on the label for experimental use only, not for human use, things like that.
Research only. Yeah.
Research
That's
only.
right.
That's what you'll see.
Yeah.
So
I love a comment that Leslie, hi Leslie, fellow Texan. Leslie says, we also use bolus Pitocin immediately. And if I remember right, Leslie is a labor and delivery nurse.
Good on you, Leslie.
Yeah. We also use bolus Pitocin immediately following delivery to prevent hemorrhage. But I do think it's overused in the labor setting to speed up the process unnecessarily, which can often have bad outcomes.
Yeah,
Totally agree.
I love it. Yeah. And I think we're starting to, I just got notification from our podcast coordinator today. Hey, we're going to start putting legal has asked us to put a disclaimer on the front of your podcast now, that not intended to provide medical advice and stuff like that. So yeah, that's a really good disclaimer. We're not experts, but I love what Leslie said, right? It's yes, I think she's confirming what we're saying, and there is good medical use for these guys. But there can be overuse. We're not sort of suggesting one way or another. We're just sort of trying to point out the difference there, right? Yep. So that talks. So we've talked about medical, and Pitocin is one of them. Then you've got she spelled it correctly too. I never knew it was Pitocin, Pitocin. Then you've got this gray area, which I think pretty soon, I think it may be on its last legs. I think eventually the FDA is going to say enough and maybe shut them down.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the bottom end of this, right? When we went to a recent conference, we saw a lot of people claiming to have peptides. Yeah. So they've got this bucket of Legos.
Yeah.
And yes, sure enough, it's full of peptides, right?
Yeah.
But
if you want to call it,
do any of them match a receptor anywhere? So what they've done, I think we shared with you, we went to one company and they said, yes, we have a peptide. They had a funny accent. I don't know where they're from. And we said, well, tell us about this peptide. And they said, well, we live across the road from a slaughterhouse where they slaughter the chickens.
Yeah.
So we bring the chicken carcass. I think he pronounced it carcass, which is not right.
Yeah.
Carcass. And he put it in a big pot and they boil it up and we pull out the, there's a fat on the top. We pull it off. And now we've got basically a bone broth.
Yeah.
And I was like, that must be full of peptides. And he said, yes, it is. You get it. And we're like, yeah, but that's like a bucket of Legos.
Yeah.
And they're all the wrong shape. They're all the wrong combination. They don't actually do anything. So we gave them a name. We call them
peptides in name only.
Right.
Pinos. Yeah. Dr. Mark coined the term pinos.
Yeah. I was inspired by the rhinos. So these are pinos. They're peptides in name only, right? So they're claiming to be a peptide. And you'll often see this too. Like you go to a shop and you'll see, oh, it's this big bucket of collagen. I should use that. I've heard a lot of things about collagen. And it may be full of peptides, but are they bioactive? Are they really doing anything? And that's kind of the other end. Now, where are we? We are in a completely unique space, right? Yeah. Bioactive precision peptides.
That's right.
So tell us about that, Dr. Allen.
Yeah. So if you look at bioactive precision peptides, what we are interested in are peptides that have been characterized, that we understand exactly what those peptides are, and we understand what the function of those specific peptides are. Let me give you an example. One of our products, our cornerstone product, is a product called FIT, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But if you look at the number of peptides that are actually contained in FIT, there are more than 4,000 individual peptides. But there are two primary peptides that we're really interested in, that we have characterized, studied. We know exactly what those two, one of them is an 8 amino acid peptide. The other one is a 10 amino acid peptide. And we know specifically what those two peptides do in the human body. And so the manufacturing process of taking that fava bean extract is built to concentrate those two peptides to a biologically active level in our products. So,
that is a kind of a unique space.
It is.
And I feel that eventually kind of everything, I think the gravitational pull for you who are listening to this podcast, I really feel like the gravitational pull ultimately will lead people to this space where they have a realization that, yes, there's a role for medical peptides, but can I stay on them forever? They have a purpose, but maybe not long term, right? Yeah. Then there's that other space, the gray area of compounding pharmacies that may or may not be shut down, but some of it's at your own risk.
Yeah.
Then there's the other area, which is meaningless, right? The bucket of Legos. It's a whole bunch, as I described here in my notes. It's really just a bunch of keys looking for a lock.
Yeah.
Imagine you've just got this bunch of keys and in your building, there are 5 different locks and you need to open the door. Well, it's really hard to find the right key, but a bioactive peptide is one that is the key that unlocks.
Exactly.
And let's, maybe we can we've got a couple more minutes in chapter 2. So let's talk about where do these, where do these come from that are in the compounded pharmacy area?
Mhm.
We have technology now that says, okay, there's 5 locks in your office. We can characterize each of those locks and we can build a key for you. This is technology that is amazing. It's called maybe in silico modeling of the receptor. So we know what these receptors are actually like really big peptides. They're proteins, sometimes 5 or 6 that join together and they form this lock. And it's a lock that sits on the cell membrane. And when that lock is opened by the right peptide, then it sends a chain reaction into the cell. Maybe it's build muscle.
Yeah.
Maybe it's feel the love, right?
Mhm.
As we've described. Maybe it's release the insulin. So that receptor, we can model it, and we can actually use the computer to say, okay, here are 5 potential keys that would unlock that.
Yeah.
And so this is easy to do. And you can actually go on the web right now, and you can probably find databases that are full of suggested peptides that will unlock, this will unlock that receptor, and this will unlock another.
Yep.
So what do companies do? They say, well, we can make that peptide. We can sell that peptide, right? That's a synthetic peptide that may or may not work. And if it does work really well and if survives injection, it may have very potent effects and you're really not sure what it does, right? So that's where they come from. We, on the other hand, we do that first part. We can do that first part. We can say, okay, here are 10 peptides that would possibly open that lock. The next part is the magic. This is the part that nobody wants to do, but this is the safe part. I think you can describe that for us, right?
Yeah, as far as concentrating the bioactive peptides and how that
finding
works.
it in nature. Yeah.
So when you identify a very specific sequence of these amino acids, what you have to do after you identify it is you have to find a viable source that can actually genetically produce naturally that specific sequence in all of their DNA sequences, right? So everything that they're producing protein wise, whatever it is, you have to find that specific sequence. Once you find that sequence is likely going to be as part of a very large sequence of very large proteins. And so you've got to break all those sequences down. You've got to identify it. You've got to find that viable source. And then here's the key. You've got to be able to you have to be able to propagate that crop to be able to grow enough that you can harvest it. And then you have to have a manufacturing process that is specific to preserving those identical sequences, those exact sequences. And that's where this business is so difficult. This is where the tens of millions of dollars and thousands of hours of manpower are put into developing these processes. That's why it's so difficult. It's so hard to find. You want to know why we have so many pinos? That's why, because those guys don't have the wherewithal, the technical ability, the capacity, the capability to go in and not only identify, but preserve that in a finished good. And that's one thing that we do have the ability to do.
Yeah. So one of the emails that we got, let's go to chapter 3 right now.
Yeah.
And basically I'm calling this What Now? What are we going to do with this information? And one of the folks who responded to our Peptides 101 last week said, well, that was really good information, but what do you do about it? What do I do about it? Why?
Yeah.
So the questions are like, what now? What difference does it make?
Yeah.
What products do you have? And natural, and maybe why are they needed, right? So we sort of started segueing into this, didn't we? Because we're saying, okay, these are natural peptides. They're found in nature. And let's just say that is the step that nobody's really doing. Some companies are, right? And we are in touch with those scientists that are doing the right research. That's the basis of all of our products, right? That's the scrutiny that we give them. We have visited, for example, the scientists that are doing the extraction and the cell biology, the receptor work, making sure that they survive gastrointestinal tract and then clinical studies, right?
Yeah, that's right.
One of them is a biotech company in Ireland.
Another one's a biotech company in France.
Right, which is based on research that was discovered in Korea, right?
In Korea,
so it's a multinational kind of an effort there.
Yeah, and Barcelona as well. So
yeah.
Yeah. So, we're fortunate that we're able to work with these specific companies. We got a brand new company in New Zealand that is really, really exciting, that we're excited about, that we're working with. So we're in constant discovery mode all the time of discovering real characterized bioactive precision peptides. And that's why Make Wellness is the Bioactive Precision Peptide Company. That's what we're about.
Yeah. So, you know what? I've mentioned that I have 8 children, and of course I don't have favorites, right? But but when it comes to products, I think I can have favorites.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I think you've probably got favorites too, right?
You know me.
So
yeah.
You need to tell us more about, okay, what are we going to do about it, guys? Let me just start though by saying, like, I view the world from a very strange place, right? Yes, I'm a cell biologist, but I love this concept of evolutionary biology. And I'm bringing this up to answer your question, like, what now? What on earth, since my body produces all of these peptides by itself, then what are you selling? And when I say selling, I mean, we're not salespeople, we're scientists, but we're trying to sell a concept to you.
Mhm.
Like, why would I need a natural peptide?
Yeah.
Here's the answer in my way of thinking. And I hope that this is easy enough for everyone to sort of grasp. Imagine that you were born in a village by the sea, maybe in Greece, 2,000 years ago. Okay, think of your life in that village. What's it like? Maybe you're by the sea. Where are you getting your food? Maybe your dad or your husband or your wife is a fisherman. So now, what's it like to catch fish for your family, right? Maybe you're a farmer, so you're growing stuff. Just think about, okay, oh man, like dad didn't catch any fish today, so Yorgo, put on your sandals and go to the corner store and get me some milk and maybe some fish and some of that new plastic stuff that they have, right? That was not an option, right? You had to work for your food, and if you didn't get your food, then you starved. But the peptides were still working. Your body says, I'm hungry, like dad didn't catch any fish. And maybe also you're working very hard. So dad's working hard. He's like hauling in the fish from the boat. He's pushing the boat in and out of the water, or maybe he's farming. He's hoeing the land, right? What's going on when you're working? From a muscle physiology point of view?
Contracting those muscles. You're working those muscles, and you're expressing and excreting those, or secreting those myokines, and all those myokines are impacting every other aspect of the human body.
Yeah. So think of it. Your peptides are working. You're hungry all the time. Your muscles are working, so they're building.
That's right.
And if you sit at home and you don't work, then the body says, dude, like there's not enough food around for you to grow that extra muscle. I know you love your muscle because you really look good in a white lava, but that muscle's got to go because we don't have the calories to keep it going, right? This is peptides in action, and this is 2,000 years ago. Okay, now what's it like today, Dr. Allen? And give me the contrast, right? From an evolutionary biology perspective, how long have we been living in our current state of affairs?
Well, our current state of affairs, really, I mean, I can think back 30 years ago and never had a cell phone, right? So really within, I would say the vast majority of what we're experiencing right now is probably really within the last 15 to 20 years. You got cell phones, you've got nonstop.
So that's stopping us sleeping.
Absolutely.
Whereas back in the village, Dimitri was sleeping when it got dark.
Right? He
had to stop working.
As soon as it got dark, you were asleep, and you slept when it was dark, and when it was light, you were working. It was really a simple
because we
process.
Forgot to mention there are peptides involved in the sleep-wake cycle.
Exactly.
Right? And if you interfere with those, you interfere with a lot of the body's functions, right? So now we have the corner store. In fact, if you're hungry, you can go and get a fully cooked meal. You don't have to get a raw fish anymore, right? You've got an abundance of food, so you can answer that peptide that says, I'm hungry all the time. And we don't really have to work very hard. So the peptides in our muscles are saying, we don't need you, so break down. So no muscle and constant hunger. And when you've got constant hunger and not much muscle, what are you building?
Well,
lots of adipose tissue.
Lots of adipose tissue, lots of body fat.
Okay, so that's what changed. And you guys are feeling it. I mean, why are people taking Ozempic? Why are people taking these peptides? Like, it's because we're feeling it. We're in this modern world. The lights are on all the time. We don't have to work for our food. We're constantly hungry, and we can just get that food. So these things are changing, and this, I think, opens up the space for like, okay, the peptides are running the show.
That's right.
We're a little bit wary of using synthetic peptides that have a really long half-life. What's the alternative? Can we use the language of our own body safely, not a drug, but actually a sequence of amino acids that's just going to break down as soon as it's done its job, but from nature, so that it's a safe way and a sustainable way?
Yeah. And the answer to that question is absolutely we can.
Right.
And we know now. But we also have known for, dozens and dozens of years that our bodies have been able to use bioactive peptides from, for example, colostrum, mother's milk, the day we're born. So
it's been part of our life.
It's absolutely a massive part of our life. And so, look, and I've said this many times, if I'm eating a 24-ounce ribeye steak, which is loaded with protein, and within those proteins, I can promise you there are bioactive peptides in all of that protein in a big old ribeye, right?
And if I'm a vegetarian and I'm eating plants, I'm probably getting some of those peptides too.
Probably
or drinking
so.
milk. Milk has got something called lactin, right?
Lactoferrin or lactin.
Lactoferrin, yeah.
You get all kinds of.
So there's immune peptides in just the milk that you buy in the store, and there are peptides that help you sleep. And they are surviving the GI and activating receptors. So it's part of nature. And what we're doing now at Make Wellness is exploiting nature to find peptides that will help you. And now let's talk about our favorite children or our favorite products. I'm sure you have one. I'll let you start.
Yeah. Look, our product line is, here's another difference between therapeutic peptide drugs and our products. Our products are designed to optimize the way our bodies function. Plain and simple. It's not about overstimulating. It's not about replacing. It's not about substituting. It's simply about optimizing our body's function every way that we possibly can. So my favorite product that we have is, and I think honestly, as a muscle physiologist and understanding the benefit of muscle mass, muscle function, muscle strength, muscle quality, all of those characteristics, fit should be everybody's foundational product. This should be the number one product that every single person in Make Wellness takes every day. And that's important too, Dr. Mark, because this is not a pre-workout drink. This is not a post-workout drink. This is a drink mix that is meant to be used every single day. Now, I will tell you though, one of the ways that I use it with hydrated. So when I drink Fit, I add a hydrated to it because—
Which are electrolytes.
Electrolytes, yes. And hydrated and Fit are the perfect 1-2 combination for optimizing muscle mass, muscle function, and muscle strength.
Yep.
So
let me tell you about the work that's gone on behind this, right? Yes, it's a formulation, but let's talk about the peptide that's in it.
Yeah.
It's a peptide that's been found and isolated from the fava bean. And we have clinical studies. So all that work that I mentioned, it's finding that peptide, finding that it activates the receptors in the muscle, right? That's all done in with the in silico modeling, and then the AI to find it in the genetic code of the fava bean, then the careful isolation, and then the study first in vitro. In vitro, which is 2 words, INVITRO, it's the Latin for in glass, meaning that you grow cells in the glass. And then you can, there are all sorts of marvelous tricks to find out if that peptide is binding to the muscle receptors in those cells. Yep. And then testing to make sure that it survives gastric acids, and then doing human clinical studies. So there are at least 5 published studies on this particular peptide. It's been very well characterized and well studied. It works. We use the clinical dose in our product. And that's why it's your favorite product, because we understand that, okay, it's overcoming evolutionary biology. Yeah. It's overcoming the fact that, most of us don't work all day. Iselin, who loved working on the farm, but she's probably not doing that anymore. So she has to work a little harder to keep the muscle, which is important for not only looks, but your youth. Yeah. So that's one peptide that you should look into a little deeper. We invite you to look at the website, makewellness.com, and put it on Fit, and you can listen to previous podcasts where we talk more specifically about it. I have another favorite.
Yep.
And that is a peptide that was found in the same way with a biotech company from brown rice. And it's a peptide that actually helps you sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So this one was studied and it binds to receptors on the adrenal glands that are producing cortisol, which is a stress hormone. And this is something that's involved in the circadian rhythm, meaning the day, night, the sleep cycle, the wake cycle. And so often, so many of us are chronically stressed to the point where our cortisol levels, which go up when we're stressed, are too high to allow us to sleep properly at night. So this is a wonderful natural peptide. It's not a sedative, but this peptide, clinical studies, although this is so new that we have seen the studies from the biotech company. We've read them, we've scrutinized them. We put this peptide into a formulation that we call Restored. And but that publication is still awaiting. I mean, it's been submitted, but awaiting. When it comes out, we'll let you know, and we'll let you guys know when it comes out, and we'll talk about it.
One of the other fantastic benefits of Restored, besides helping you get to sleep, is, and you and I have had this discussion many times, and we've also had the discussion with other affiliates who have experienced the same thing. It is a tremendous de-stressing product. And so because of the way it works and kind of lowering that and suppressing that cortisol release, lowering cortisol levels, it actually can be taken at different times of the day. If you are feeling super stressed or super anxious, there is tremendous benefit to using Restored, kind of would call it a spot use per se. If you are feeling overwhelmed with stress, it is fantastic at kind of lowering those stress levels.
Yeah. Let me just say, while we're talking about this and the stress, we actually have a product called Calm. Now, we mentioned the Lego pieces, right? And those Lego pieces as a peptide are very powerful. But some of those Lego pieces, very special amino acids, actually also act as neuromodulators, I guess you would say. They modulate the brain. So we have a product called Calm that is formulated that way, right? And it's really one of my favorites.
Yeah. I tell you what, I love Calm because it has a muscle relaxer. You can take Calm and it's like wrapping up in a warm blanket by a fireplace and just chilling.
All natural.
With
amino acids, special kinds like GABA.
L-theanine, just tremendous benefits. But when you look at GABA aminobutyric acid, GABA is a tremendous muscle relaxer. So if you're feeling tense, your muscles are tight, even if you're having some cramping or, Charlie horses or things like that, GABA is a tremendous muscle relaxer. And that's kind of why you relax and you feel so warm. But
dude, just looking at it relaxes me because it's in this beautiful purple stick pack and it's not added to water. You actually put it in your mouth. I like to put it under my tongue or on my tongue. And it's this beautiful sherbety flavor. I love it just for the experience.
Oh man, I tell you what, GABA is a fantastic product, but that GABA Restored, that 1-2 punch right there, I like to take GABA. I like to take my Calm about 7 o'clock some nights. If we've had a hard day, like we get off a podcast, take a little Calm, or even take it before the podcast a lot of times, right? Just kind of helps calm you down a little bit. In fact, Carmen will remember last year, I got overheated. I'd worked out real hard, and Carmen gave me a Calm at our event last year. And within about 15 minutes, I was just down, calm, had cooled off. It was amazing what it did for me. So Carmen actually taught me another use for Calm.
That's great. Isn't
Fantastic. It? Yes. Love that product.
Yeah. So the student becomes the teacher.
She absolutely did.
Right. So this is great. And then we have another peptide that comes from yeast. And it's so interesting, but yeast, which is just brewer's yeast, scientists have done a bunch of research on yeast.
They have.
And it is full of bioactive peptides. The secret is finding them and sort of getting them in the right concentration and then studying them, right? But there are peptides in the yeast that help with appetite, right? So this is one of the big reasons why people are sort of as we mentioned, know about peptides
Mhm.
now.
Mhm.
But we really want to give you a sustainable approach to helping sort of control your appetite, a sustainable approach to supporting your body's own natural hunger signals. So the peptides that are in lean are designed for that purpose.
That's right. That's right. Lean's fantastic, but one of the things we talk about muscle strength, muscle function, muscle mass, right?
Yep.
But one of the things that we often probably don't talk about enough is muscle quality.
Yes.
And when you start talking about muscle quality, what we're referring to is muscle and how much fat has actually infiltrated those muscle fibers. It's a condition called myosteatosis. I don't want to use big words because basically myo means muscle, steatosis means fat infiltration into the muscle. So that's what myosteatosis is.
Yeah.
When you think about muscle quality, that combination of fit and lean, and I would add hydrated to that because of its benefits to both of those peptides, that fit lean combination for muscle quality, incredible. Now, here's what you have to understand. This doesn't just happen overnight. This is not a 45-pound and 4-month deal, guys. I know we're all hearing this from the GLP-1 people out there. I've lost 45 pounds in 3 months and blah, blah, blah. And I want to ask you one question. Do you think that that is sustainable, maintainable weight loss? I'm going to answer it real quick and say that it's absolutely not. Our bodies cannot handle that much change in that short a period of time without inciting some type of response. And the response is typically negative. So you have to be really careful with that. Our products are designed to work 1 or 2 pounds a month, slow, steady, maintainable, sustainable, improve muscle quality, improve muscle function, decrease our body fat, get rid of our visceral fat, our sub-Q fat.
Yeah.
That's what they're designed
and
to
let
do.
me just say, like you described rapid weight loss. What that does to the body, it says, hey, I'm in starvation mode, and it actually puts you in fight or flight stress mode.
Huge
So
stress.
this is why we have sort of side effects like the fat under the skin disappears so quickly that the tissue of the skin can't remodel in time. And so you get kind of saggy skin. You might have hair loss. Again, because the body, because of rapid weight loss, says, hey, this is famine. I'm in fight or flight. I'm going to redirect my energy into other areas of the body that will keep you alive.
Yeah. That's when your body starts getting rid of everything that it doesn't need.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, muscle is one of those as well. That's why a lot of those people that are losing that much, 40 to 50% of that is muscle mass loss.
Right.
That is a pandemic by itself waiting to happen. That's a scary thing for me, especially.
Yeah. So hopefully today has been helpful. It's been sort of Peptides 101, part 2.
Yeah.
That's 2 for those who don't speak French. We talked about sort of the insulins that you've heard of, like insulin, the hugging protein oxytocin. We talked about hunger peptides, ghrelin, about the feeling full peptides like GLP-1. We talked about messages from the muscle, messages from the immune system. Part 2 today, we talked about like, why does everyone know about it all of a sudden? So we talked about some of the pharma, and we talked about the differences between the FDA approved versus the compounding pharmacy versus the PINOs, those in name only, and then the space that we're in and how much trouble you have to go to there. And then what now? What difference should it make to you? And that we're living in tough times, right? Because our bodies were designed for scarcity. Now we're in times of, basically forced inactivity and plenty of food. And these peptides that we are making at Make Wellness are designed to help you through basically modern life. And so hopefully that has helped. And thank you for those who gave us a second chance and came back tonight and got a different version, maybe a different facet, a different way to describe what peptides are, maybe a little less biochemical and a little more emotional.
Yeah. More applications based tonight, right? What does it do for us? And that's the important part. Listen, you guys, y'all go have a great week and go use this material to make a difference in people's lives. And that's what Make Wellness is all about, is making a difference.
And get in touch with those people that invited you to the call, and maybe you could invite others to the call. Certainly, please, subscribe and like to our podcast, and so that we can sort of get the message out to everyone, keep them healthy.
That's right. Come back and see us next week. You guys have an awesome rest of the day and the weekend, and we'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.